Good evening, Mrs. Spinelli. I believe all committee members are on.
Thank you.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Cleaver, before we officially start the meeting, we will take roll call, and then I do have a statement to make.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Garwood?
Mr. Richard Belt,
Here.
Mrs. Rita Spinelli,
Here.
Mr. Nathan Foeller,
Here.
Mr. Jonathan Cleaver, Mr. Ed Rarick,
Here.
Okay, I would just like to take a minute to remind everyone that this is a committee meeting of the Lehighton Area School Directors. The public is welcome to attend and comment at the end of this meeting. No decisions are made in committee meetings, just recommendations. This is not a town hall where the public goes back and forth with each other or with board members. That is our policy, and it is supported by both School Code and the Sunshine Act. While we recognize that everyone is entitled to their own personal opinion, no one is entitled to their own personal facts. This committee will go on actual facts, which will be used to reply to the AG and any other group that requests them. As treasurer, I intend to look over the monthly invoices and meet with the business manager if needed. I have received my executed surety bond and have sent it to Mr. Rarick. I will not be balancing the checkbooks, as that is an administrative function done in accordance with general accounting practices. Anything that anyone needs to monitor, anything you need to monitor spending will be contained in the bank statements provided to the board members. Please respect the attempt by this board to continue taking steps to improve our financial position while pursuing our educational goals, and we thank you for your cooperation. Mr. Cleaver, you may take over.
Thank you, Ms. Spinelli. Okay, the first thing on the agenda is George's transportation bill. You can see it there being presented. So you're aware, again, with the amount of days that we do transport our students. They're all listed there. They're all broken down, as you can see, as every month we have several runs that are, for different types of needs. For example, special runs for public schools. Also, some special education runs if needed as well. So, is there any questions in that bill that's being presented?
None for me.
No.
No. And as expected too, just moving forward, you'll see too less days with our virtual online classrooms. Of course, there is no transportation on those days, so those days would be subtracted on Mr. George's monthly bills.
Thank you.
The next thing on the agenda is something that I was not really familiar with. I have to be honest. We are in the PSHAC Consortium for Health Insurance. This is, you could read it there, that there is a surplus that is in there for the year finishing up for 1920. In the past, the business manager has signed off on, how they would want this to take place, whether to keep it in the reserve account or to, request the money. I did ask for documents because I did not have any that I was able to find on what we have done in the past when we were in this consortium, because as you remember, we were in it, then we withdrew, and now we are back in with this consortium. So the documents that I was able to to come across. In 1314, a request was made to keep 926,474 in the reserve account. For 1415, a request was made to be refunded by check in the amount of $1,204,515. And then in 1516, there was a request to be refunded by check for $1,165,739. I did go back and look; these were then earmarked to the general fund for these surplus funds. But I wanted to bring this to the attention because I was just made aware of this recently. I did ask if there was any documents on how much was there when we completely pulled out of the consortium, and they did not have them to share with me, but I did ask them to continue to look for them. So I'm bringing this to the committee's attention to see, the recommendation that the board has. If, of course, this would help with our cash issue for this year. We do have some unbudgeted expenses, for example, transportation, that this would help pay for as well. But this is something that I was not, involved with in the past. It was handled through the business office and with the transition and everything else. And this is the first year we're back in the PSHIC. So, Patty didn't have any involvement with this either. So I'm bringing it to the committee's attention to just see what their thoughts are and what they believe we should do with this surplus fund that has been presented to us.
Mr. Cleaver, if I understand correctly, keeping in the reserve account is in case our utilization changes and we need extra money besides what we have. Is that correct?
That is correct. If your budgeted expenses or overcharged does go above, so if you have a bad year, you can use the surplus funds to help, pay.
Okay.
In the end.
And how is our utilization? Do we have some critical issues? I mean, does it look like we're the same, better, worse?
At this point, from what we have, it looks like we're running approximately the same, or not approximately, but close to the same. So it's hard to say for sure.
Oh yeah, I understand.
Yeah, I know. My only concern is when we did bring back in transportation, we did, have some, that's an unbudgeted expense that we have, that something like this would help, assist us at the final, when it's time to, make those payments and those final payments. And it doesn't have to be for transportation, it could be for anything. But I believe in the past when it was brought back into the district, it went directly into the general fund.
And that would be my preference, would be that it go to the general fund, because Lord knows we do need it, and everyone knows that we don't know how much we're getting from the state, and we don't know what's coming in any kind of occupation taxes, things like that, because of the pandemic. So my preference would be to get the cash, but Mr. Foeller, what do you think?
My thoughts would be the same thing. I feel like, especially given our cash flow situation this year, having this in hand, able to use wherever it's needed would be more beneficial to us, likely, than having it sitting there as a potential reserve in case we get any surprises that we don't know about. I'd also be interested to hear Mr. Eric's input on this, if he has any thoughts.
Yeah, sure. I too agree with, being refunded of the surplus. The only caution I would put out there is, late 2020, there was a lot of probably pullback on elective procedures from a medical standpoint that may take place this spring, which may negatively impact our spending in the spring, which may cause us to spend more towards that. But again, it's a toss-up right now with the way COVID is, spreading rapidly. That may not be the case as well. So.
Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Belts, I know Mr. Belts, if he has any questions or comments with this?
Yeah, no questions right now.
Rusty, do you feel we should refund the money or keep it in reserve?
I think we should keep it in reserve, but I'm outvoted on this, so I'm just gonna stay quiet on it. Because, there's no telling what the expenses are coming up. But if we have the money in the bank account, it's gonna get spent. So I'd like to leave it in reserve if we could.
So just leave it for additional insurance expenses that may come up next year.
Correct.
Okay. Well, this will go before the board.
Yeah, this is something that I will, bring before the board to get a final direction on what they wish to do. I went back and looked, the other dates were not brought to the board. It was just handled solely within the business office. But I felt that, as I was studying up and getting the information with this, I thought it was something the board should ultimately make the decision on how it should be addressed.
If we choose to leave this in reserve, do we have the option to pull it out in the future? Should we change our mind or need it?
I'd have to double check. I will get that question answered before the board meeting. But I'm not 100% sure. All the other requests were dated. There was one for November, one for December, and one for January. So there's 3 different months there. So that may be an option, Mr. Bolton.
Okay, and then also, and Mr. Eric, I know you're just beginning to look at next year's budget. If we have a surplus there, would we end up reducing our budget for next year as a result of that surplus, or would we still plan to budget the same and hope that surplus just sits there and is not used?
Yeah, we would still plan to budget the same.
Okay. That makes sense. So yeah, I don't really have a strong feeling either way. Like I said, my gut feeling would be to bring it back just because I know we have some immediate cash flow issues. But I know, both myself personally and business, I tend to leave. I feel better having a surplus balance there also. So look forward to more discussion on this at the board meeting.
And I agree, Nate. My first inclination is to take the cash because we are strapped right now. But as I said before, we have no idea what else is coming at us. So, yeah, I mean, this is one of those things, damned if you do and damned if you don't. So
I do know, not to change the topic, but cyber charter payments are definitely going to be more than
right.
budgeted. And there's an interesting article today that came out, I believe, in the Citizen's Voice, that students in these cyber charter schools are actually getting monetary assistance, Target gift cards, and those type of things too. So I think there'll be more to come from the cyber school cost and discussion in the near future.
And I agree with that also.
Yeah.
The next is the consolidation of bank accounts. I will turn it over to Mr. Rarick for this discussion.
Sure, thank you. So obviously, being new to the office, one of the things we were looking at was, some dormant bank accounts. There's actually 4 accounts on the books right now. One being a health benefits account that prior to me was used, but when the previous business manager came in, she got shifted over to the general funds account. So there's a dormant account sitting with $5,418 in it. That hasn't been used in approximately 2 years. There's also a security deposit account that was set up for the Wesleyan Church for the middle school rental. That one is sitting dormant with $8,001 in the account. There's also an athletics projects account that was established for the construction of the football field. That one actually has a 0 balance, but it's not being used. And then there's an older account that has been dormant as well for at least a year, that was set up for an ACE grant with $1.35 in it. So we're looking to make the recommendation from the business office standpoint, just to simplify things. Those accounts are not being used. There is cash in some of them, totaling $13,421.37 to get those moved into the correct funds, obviously at a board meeting, but then to close those accounts out so they're not just sitting there with no use.
And Mr. Cleaver, do we have a document on that or no, this is just the next one that's coming up?
Yeah, that's just the next one that's coming up. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you.
So open for any thoughts or comments on consolidation of those accounts. Obviously, it just doesn't make sense to leave cash in an account that's not being used, in my opinion.
And it also doesn't make sense to leave those accounts open.
Correct.
Just creating extra work for bookkeeping and accounting and everything else that goes into it. So I would have no problem at all consolidating.
Nor would I.
Okay.
Rusty, your thoughts?
I agree.
Okay. Moving on, the next topic was simplified board reports. These are just some examples I pulled from other districts of things that I believe from a business standpoint we could produce necessarily for the public to help understand where we are as a district, to make it simpler to look at. Obviously, I know some of the reports the board gets are rather lengthy and kind of down in the weeds and looking at a lot of line items. But the next series of examples here, the first one up there is just kind of a recap report. And it just kind of hits the highlights for the district for the month. This does not pertain to our district, what you're seeing, but this is just an example of another district's report that I think we can, utilize and, modify for our own purposes if need be. So this would kind of be your first report. It's basically a monthly recap report talking about things such as revenues, your local, state, and federal, what might be coming in on the month, any kind of earned income tax reports, and then doing comparison of actual expenditures by object code as you go down. The high objects such as salaries, benefits, technical services, supplies, and property. You're hitting on your main sources of expenditure. So it's out there to the public to be able to see in a much more easy, readable manner. So that would be report number one. Again, these are examples. My thought is we look at these things, we see what we like, what we don't like, and we can modify them to our benefit. If you want to scroll down, then the next report, which happens to be sideways, is basically just a revenue report. Again, a top level revenue report, looking at, this year versus previous year, as well as budget for real estate, EIT, transfer taxes, and other. And again, it will graph where we are in terms of budget for that particular topic. Again, this is not ours. This is just an example. And then we did the same thing for an expenditure report. Again, looking to simplify these things, to put it, your top expenses as a district onto a simple report, along with a graph that shows, again, prior year's budget, prior year's performance, this year's budget, this year's performance, year to date, and then graphs it nicely at the bottom. Again, trying to make it easier to read. And then you can scroll down. This was just an example of, again, an earned income tax report that we could produce. Just trying to, again, show a simplified way of looking at things on a more of a monthly basis. And then I believe the last report, which, is basically more of a general treasurer's report. Again, just an example from another district that they're using. I think it's very clean. It's very readable. I'd be out there for the public to make a better understanding of where we are as a district. I know some of the reports, get difficult to read when you have a lot of information on them. So just trying to throw these out there as examples to look at for the group to hopefully come back and say, yeah, we could maybe utilize some of these, or let's try and change them. Just looking for some feedback on ways to simplify, to get, a better understanding from both internally and outside of the building for the public in particular, to make it easier for people to get involved.
Well, Mr. Eric, I'm all for making it easier to read. You do know, though, that we did have them simplified, but then there was concern that the board wasn't getting as much information. So I guess my question is this: will the board still be able to get those longer, more detailed reports?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
My thought is if we put these reports out there and the board looks at them and you say, okay, these look pretty good, but why are these, you got a couple expenditures here. Why are we, we're halfway through the year, but we're at 70% of what we said was budget. Let's look a little deeper into that. That to me is a much more simplified way of looking at something than looking through 200 pages of reports to try and find one line item that you're really looking for. But we can still produce those reports.
And I agree.
And we'll still provide those reports at anybody's request.
And this would
Yes.
also be helpful just for keeping the general public, making it easier for them to stay informed, again, without having to dig through 50 pages of reports.
Exactly.
That may not make much sense to them. No, I think this is a fantastic idea.
Mr. Belts, do you have any comments regarding these reports or questions?
No comments at this time.
Okay, the next is actually some finance notes, and I wanted to bring this to the attention because I know there was some discussion about how we got to some of the points we were at financially, and so we went back, and if you see the dates on this document, everything is pulled from the committee minutes or the board meeting minutes or the finance meeting minutes, so you could see that questions were asked. I think it's important because there's some individuals or people that feel, not enough questions are being asked in different things. But you could see there was questions that were asked. You could see that there was finance meetings, the audits, were presented. Budgets were approved as they were supposed to be improved. Questions were asked about fund balance. Questions were asked about state funding. And I think it's just important to get that out, just so the public knows without going through and going through minutes of, long meetings. These are just, some certain points in some certain areas where, you could see from the dates that if you would go on our website, you could actually pull the full minutes from those meetings. But just to show, that questions were asked regarding it, our finances, and some individuals and some people were asking, how do we get to this point? But you could see, the answers were given when questions were being asked, and all that information is in the finance meeting minutes and in the board meeting minutes. So I just wanted to give this as an attachment, as a recap. In the past, what are some of the some discussion topics that have been heavy at our last couple meetings, and this was part of them.
Now, Mr. Cleaver, will this be available to the public?
Yeah, this is posted on the website. Yep. Yeah, and these are all right from, you could go right to those, all the points are directly from the minutes and the meetings that are listed there above them. So they're all on the website and they're all pulled from them.
Okay.
Yep. So this is part of the attachments as well. Any questions regarding?
I don't have a question because we've been through this so many times. And I was there for most of it. And I guess my question is, I know everyone says we can't let this happen again. And I certainly believe that to be true, but I'm not sure how you're going to guarantee that. Because quite frankly, at any point, someone, whether it be an administrator, a board member, or someone checking things, could miss something or could, as in this case, give completely false information that decisions are made upon. So That would be my only comment. I would love to say this will never happen again, but having worked in accounting for years, I know nobody could say that.
Well, I know, I will say, Ed's been here a short time, and I mean, he is, hit the ground running, asking lots of questions. Currently, our audit is, being complete. So I know he's doing everything in his power to make sure nothing like this happens, as you can see from some of the reporting and some of the information that he's already starting to put together for the board. So we're, that is definitely our goal, is that it something like this is avoided in the future for our district. And again, our goal is to move everything forward and to get to where we need to be for the benefit of not only just our students and staff, but the entire Lehighton community. Okay. This I know is also a enclosure as part of the information that you have presented to you. This information is pulled right from the audit report that was performed by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania Department of the Auditor General. So as we're both aware, as everyone is aware, the two findings is there, and we did have to send in a response, which is also part of this. But in addition, I just wanted to, I think it's important for the public to know too, there wasn't just the financial piece that was, reviewed. There was much more to this report. You could see there was transportation that was reviewed. This is something that the Auditor General's office, moving forward, there's been several districts throughout the Commonwealth that had some, I'll call them hiccups with transportation operations. So they did go through all our books. They went through how our reimbursements being done. They reviewed bus driver information that we had. And as you could see, there was no reportable issues for transportation. They did explain to us that during this process that we could look at naming some of our bus pickups and drop-offs as hazardous areas, possibly, especially the rural areas. So we're looking into that. That would help with our reimbursement. The transportation calculation has been completed. That was one of the first things that Ed did when he arrived. He took that report and submitted everything to the state for our transportation reimbursement. So we're on the right path with all of that. The right to know was another one that was reviewed. So they wanted to make sure we were in compliance with everything for right to know. So we did comply with everything regarding right to know. They went through the books, they went through everything. Melanie worked with them, right to know compliance officer, worked with them. And again, you could see from that review, there was no reportable issues for right to know. Administrator separations. This was something that was a finding in the past. Again, so they went through all our current contracts. They went through all the people on the payroll. They made sure our information going into the state regarding PSERS was accurate and that we were doing everything correctly with our employees. And you could see that there was no reportable issues either for any type of administrator separations. Bus driver requirements is another area. We went through, we have all the documents for bus drivers that were required to be here, all their background checks, their trainings, their physicals, everything we do. Leon does a fantastic job with keeping us up to date with all that information. Again, you could see there that there was no reportable issues. Safe Schools was another one. They came through and they reviewed everything as far as safe schools, actually walked through our buildings, checked our buildings in certain areas. So they asked if, wanted to make sure that there was all the safety requirements were met. We have all our MOUs in place. Again, school safety is one of those areas where it's,
confidential and a lot of different things just because of it being safety and school related. But you could see going through, looking at security drills, all our fire drills, everything was up to date, everything was reported accurately in PDE, and you could see there was no reportable issues for those areas. Anything on the areas that there were no findings on? Any questions?
I have a question on something that this just popped up when I saw it on the page. Are we continuing to work to get services out of NEF?
Yes, we are. Yes,
Okay.
we could do. We have sent information. Then we have not received any response from them. Yeah, but that documents were drafted and requested information. We have not received the response, and of course, we will follow up with all of that.
Thank you.
Okay, now on to the findings. This again is part of the Auditor General's report. When they have a finding, you have to do an administrative response. We worked with our, of course, Ed was not here when this took place, but we worked with our past business manager to complete these responses. So this was submitted as part of the report. So you'll be able to find these responses right within the report for the findings. So a lot of the information is there. The factual information is all here. You could see that even during the audit, there was some things that were taking place to help improve it. Patty, when she was here, did a great job with getting some deficiencies out to the board to make sure that was available to them. There was additional information that she was then giving the board. She did a presentation on fund balance. If you remember when she first started, what it is and what it is not, to make sure that the board had a understanding of fund balance, the public bidding you could see, and I don't want to go through and list it again. This is all part of the audit report that was completed by the Auditor General. And when they did when the Auditor General presented this to the board, this was also discussed at that meeting as well, if you remember when we had that. So that is the finding for number one. Finding number two relates to the no cost with NEF. You could see how that is listed. We also included websites. We also included Times News articles. We included emails that were received in this report that we had. So you could see all that. And again, this is all presented in the document in the complete document for the Auditor General report. That is all there. So you could see that the payments, the wire transfers that were made, in how we are moving forward and how we are, changing some of the practices in regards to the wire transfers, especially. There is, and I'll, move on to the next one that relates to the same thing. Part of the audit report, it's the Act 44. You have 120 days to respond in an Act 44 form, which we did. We did get a report, automated report from them that was generated after 60 days, notifying us that the report hasn't been filed. It has since been filed, and I've been in contact with the Auditor General's office too, to make sure that everything was compliant, and they did respond that there is no additional information needed at this time. So this is the Act 44 report that you're required to complete. You could see there's a text box there, but we extended it a little bit to a complete report. The first one is the $13 million over the 5 years that was reviewed. The majority of this comes directly from the response that is required for the Auditor General to file their final report. But we did add, a couple things to this, the effort to ensure that the audit findings, will be reviewed. We did talk about now that district does now supply bank statements to the entire board as part of their operation. We also talked about the additional
expenditure reporting that is included. So we did add a little bit more to it that we since have added actually since this, the original report was completed for that. Moving on to the second finding, which was the NEF finding with them at no cost. Again, we kept the majority of what we did respond in our original administrative piece. We did add that, talked about the payments. One of the things we did find is that they were coded to a prepaid expense. So the reports that the board was not, that was receiving that expense wouldn't have shown. And it would only show on a balance sheet because of it being cash. But now the board received, because of you receiving copies of the bank statements, it'll allow them to be viewed in the caches that you could see that is assigned to the district on a monthly basis. So the board will actually know exactly on hand the amount of cash that is available to the district. So I wanted to touch base on that audit, not only the two findings, but also, the other areas where no findings were found that were reviewed while the Auditor General was here. So questions from the committee regarding those reports?
That's basically what we've discussed many times and what was in the report. And when we had our virtual meeting with the auditors, a lot of this was mentioned. So I have no questions at this time. I don't know about Nathan and Mr. Belts.
No real questions from me either. I do feel that having the bank statements available will help. But even that being said, as Rita, as you mentioned earlier, it boils down to somebody doing their job and not deliberately trying to hide something. Because unless we're going to sit there and add up every bank account every month, it's hard to see something like this.
Mr. Belts, any question?
No question. No comment.
All right. Ms. Spinelli, I turn it over for comments from the attendees.
Yeah, I do have one question, not on the findings, Mr. Cleaver, but on the recommendations. Where do we stand with all of those? There were recommendations such as doing multi-year budgets, which I don't understand how anybody right now can do multi-year budgets. And I know for a fact that nobody can, but those kinds of things, there were recommendations. Are we working on those? Are we
Yes, we are.
addressing those?
Yeah, we are looking at getting out of 5-year projections are, again, that's what they are. They are projections, but we are looking at it. It does make it a little bit more complicated with, the situation we're in with COVID. For example, the transportation reimbursement's a big discussion because there was no transportation from March 13th, on to the end of the school year. However, they still want us to calculate 180 days for that. Some schools, made I'll call it a good faith payment to their contractors that were subcontracted, as we did with Mr. George. I negotiated with him. So those are areas that make it a little bit more difficult as we're looking to project what those costs may be. That's just one small example. Cyber charter schools have thrown it off the rails too, projection wise of, what to expect, moving forward. Special education cost is another area, but we do plan on doing a projection of what, again,
For what it's worth.
we could do look at 5 years, but I think we're really looking at, this year, next year, and the following, the next 3 years. Moving forward. And there is additional funding too that has come in through the CARES Act, but of course that's earmarked for certain, things as well.
So we're working on the recommendations also.
Oh yeah, well, many of the recommendations, I believe they even noted in the report that we are currently doing that. We actually, have.
So they have their answer, in other words.
Yes. Yep.
So that email that they sent out was a reminder for certain things, but most things have already been accomplished. Is that correct?
That is correct. And again, I did confer with the Auditor General that at this point, there's nothing else they need. And that's a 60-day automatic generated, reminder.
Okay. All right. I understand. Before you do get to the public, I would just like to remind them that there is a 3-minute. We can be lenient, but if it starts getting out of hand and we're going over the same thing more than once, that person will be cut off. It's not silencing, it's keeping with policy.
And the other one regarding those recommendations too, all contracts are, being sent to the board, no matter what it is. Not only this issue with the NEF one, we have come across contracts with garbage, come across contracts with the current agreement with the custodial ware for cleaning and those type of things. So anything that is a contract moving forward will be presented to the board, even if it's a small part. But if it's a contract or agreement moving forward, this information will be presented to the board for approval. That was one of the big recommendations they had.
Thank you.
Sounds good.
Public comment. I do have one. Mr. Bradley? Mr. Bradley?
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
How many people are in this meeting?
At this point, I believe
27.
27.
Mhm.
And I'm the only one with my hand raised?
No.
Okay. Okay, well, I'm glad to see the public's attending this committee meeting and this tribunal that should have been taking effect. Rita has stymied the efforts to hold this government accountable, but we'd like to try to hold them accountable. We'll do our best. I have 3 minutes. I'm very skeptical. The tactics used by the committee members and by the superintendent to silence the stakeholders has been ongoing. One of those tactics is a failure to release financial information to the public. Another is to pretend that the government authority has no control over such matters as the expenditures found in the AG report. The annual financial report was due this past October and has not yet been released, nor has the data that creates that report been released to the public or the board. The audit that typically starts in July, soon after the June 30th closing date, is finalized before the October AFR deadline. Yet the administration did not arrange access to the auditors until well after the extended deadline for the AFR, which was December 31st of 2020. The AG report shows non-compliance. You guys ignored that in this meeting. You have non-compliance with Pennsylvania School Code, cheating the community for proper lawful government activities. They cheated. They broke the law. Larry Stern, Wayne Wentz, and Steve Howland have exhibited what we all despise, an unlawful application of government authority against the community. And as a dictatorial reign of taxation upon the community that will be felt for generations. Shame on those evildoers. They should apologize and tender their immediate resignations. And this government agency, which is this committee, Rita, that just made recommendations to the board against the Sunshine Act because they should have allowed public comment prior to an official action, which is a recommendation by definition, needs to be corrected. You need to correct yourself, Rita. You need to educate yourself. At the bottom of this form, you had commitment to excellence. Yet, Nathan says, people are trying to do their job. No, they're not. They have a responsibility to do it. And even the information provided in this meeting that was taken from the Auditor General's report, remove the footnotes that reply back to Pennsylvania School Code showing the violations and the problems and the references thereof. He edited it. It's wrong. If you're going to provide transparency, you should show the people where the administration failed, where the government agency failed for lawful compliance with Pennsylvania School Code, where $3 million was taken from this community, and yet you still want to push the budgets forward. That $3 million that was wasted with NEF, that hopefully can be restored, as I suggested, because since the contract was not signed by us as a board or by the board as a whole, it should be null and void, and that money should be returned to us. But the problem you run into is that people like Rita and Nathan that are sitting there, even today, rubber stamping this administration without actually holding them accountable, questioning them. You have to ask the question, why was the money moved in wire transfer? Why are we paying a stipend to an administration for something that we didn't even do? Why are we pulling $8 million aside for employee benefits and then using it to buy an off-budget stadium that's not in compliance with Pennsylvania school code? Those are the questions, Rita. That's what holds you accountable. You're hiding from that responsibility. You're pretending that you don't have any of these responsibilities as if certain things will happen in accounting. No, they're black and white. They're on paper. They should be seen by everyone and could have been corrected if this government had transparency originally. I seek to have a conversation with my board, my government, on these matters, not just a 3-minute speech. Thank you.
Ms. Bose?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. On those reports, the board reports, the enclosures and the finance notes on the website, why were they not noted that they were examples and not actual numbers for our district?
We did not note them. We did just white it out. We did not note that they were actual numbers for our district. That is correct.
Right, but it should have been noted that they were given as examples of perhaps upcoming reports. I wouldn't have spent any time today of really looking at them. I mean, you know, when you see something like that, you figure it's for your own district. I agree, it would be nice to have simplified reports as long as the public still gets the full reports that the board gets, because I have taken many hours to teach myself how to read them. Also, with the proposed budgets and, like you said, a 5-year plan or a 5-year whatever that the Auditor General proposed, certainly there are going to be estimates, and anyone who has any common sense is going to realize that, especially with COVID and everything that's going on. But it would be nice to see what perhaps we can expect within reason. I'd like to see that get up prominently on the website once it's completed, and hopefully it will be completed soon. I realize there's a lot of work to be done and we have a new business administrator. I want to have great faith in him and the administration, but past performance, it's difficult. However, Ed has nothing to do with that. I did spend some time today trying to find the article referenced on the Times News, and it's nowhere to be found there, even using the headline. It would be nice if perhaps you could put the date that it came out in the Times News.
Yes, we could do that and reference it.
All right, and I also sent an email to the committee asking to have the January 2015 payment of bills available on the website. And that was not addressed and it's not available. I realize that it's now coming up on the 6th year and you can get rid of that financial information. I would suggest you do not, especially with all these questions. I have filed a right to know, and yes, I filed it while everybody was not in school, but I certainly hope I will hear back within the 5 business days, but who knows, because no one knows when the right to know office is closed or open. So how to determine whether or not it was deemed denied, I have no idea. And neither does anybody else. There are 3 board members that have been on this board for a decade or close to it. I don't understand why they would need to be informed what a fund balance is and what it is not. Seems to me in all those years that would have been learned. And those members voted for all those budgets, all those years, knowing that the fund balance would be used to balance the budget. And looking at the AFR would show the true picture. Yes, it's a year behind, I get that. But it is what it is and shows the true picture of what was actually spent. Are we going to make our policy or our policies stronger? Are we going to list in the policies what information will be provided to the board so this doesn't happen again? As long as they look, that's the key. They have to look. It's their job to look. Yes, people can miss things. I have no issues with people making a mistake, but repeatedly and not doing their job, neglecting their duty and not looking at all, it seems that that happened year after year after year. In the 2014 wire transfer, it was authorized by the board president and the then business administrator. So the board president knew it was being made. Now in the 2017 information on the payment of bills, it came up as NEF Cyber Learning. I was told in a meeting that the one that came up in 2014 came up as a QZAB payment. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. I don't have the document, which is why I wanted it to be available before the meeting, so I could look. Now, you know that I go through the payment of bills. Oh, the other question I had, and I would save it for buildings and grounds, but I may not be here. I would like to know, has the new stadium been winterized?
Yes, that has been completed.
Okay, so we should see a smaller number for the electric bill.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was winterized and actually was able to be winterized earlier because not being used for any extra playoff games.
Do you have any idea how much less that bill is?
I do not, but I could reach out, and if I do find Ms. Bowes, I could send you an email.
Okay, because the payment of bills won't be available till just before the regular meeting. That's why.
I will talk to Mr. Spots and see if that information is readily available.
Now, another contract, and I don't know if you found this, it was probably done many years ago with Ohio Pile, who in Giant, at least, I've been told it's also in Walmart, where there is merchandise sold to support the Lehighton Area High School. Now, I've been watching it for the last couple months, and it's selling pretty good, or it's being stolen, I don't know, but it looks to be selling pretty well.
There is a agreement we have with Walmart and also Giant to where we do get a percentage of those proceeds when it's mostly clothing, I believe, is
Right, mostly, but not
yes.
all.
Yes. So we do receive, we are with them, and I want to say it's Walmart and I believe Giant, but I think Giant maybe through A+ awards, if I'm not 100% correct.
No, Giant, it's in Giant, it says, and it's been there many years.
Okay.
They also do the A+ rewards, but this is, I just want to make sure that we're getting whatever money we're entitled to through that program.
Yes, I will check on that as well.
I mean, I used to be in charge of that department, and that was 10 years ago, and it was there then.
Okay.
So I know it's been there for many, many years. But just recently, I've been really, since I haven't been in the department, in that particular department that handles that, I've been watching how much is being sold, and it's really quite a bit. And so hopefully we are receiving what we're supposed to be receiving. But since it was a contract that was probably, or an agreement that was done many years ago, I didn't know if any of the current people had any idea that we were supposed to be receiving it, and I just wanted to make that clear.
We'll check on that, Ms. Bowes, and I can get that information back to you. I'll also look and see the 2014 bills. We should be able to pull that up under QZAP payment as well for you pretty quick.
Okay, thank you. I would appreciate that because I want to see how it came out. I do have a right to know request in for that particular file.
Okay,
But like I said, I put it in when everybody was on vacation. I've heard nothing back. I don't know when the office is open and when it is not.
all right. I will check on that and get back to you either way, whether we have it readily available or whether it'll take some time to dig up.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Cleaver, could you copy me on
Yes,
what
yep,
you send
absolutely.
us, please? Thank
Yep.
you.
I'm also looking to see if we could find additional information on Giant and Walmart too, to see when the last
Yeah,
money
check came in. Yeah.
Yeah, I had no idea that Walmart was involved, but I don't patronize Walmart, so I would have no idea on that. I was surprised to hear that. A customer told me that it's also sold at Walmart, so, which is a good thing. I mean, anything that
Yes.
brings in revenue is a good thing.
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
thank you. No further requests for comment, Ms. Spinelli?
No further requests? All right, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
Oh, hold on. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Mr. Andrews? Mr. Andrews?
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry. I just saw it pop up at the last minute. I do apologize.
Well, that's fine. Okay, so you can hear me well?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay. All right, to start with, on a yearly basis, I pay $10,000 to the Lehighton School District. And I would expect that this money would be used wisely. So I'm a little concerned here, and I have two questions. Why did you give $3 million to the NEF?
The NEF agreement that was part of the QZAB, which is a qualified zone academy bond that was used. And I'll scroll down here. If you could read the exact finding, and it has all the information that it was presented to. We partnered with NEF, and we were being billed for different types of programs that they offered us. And you could see that I don't want to read it for you, but all this information you could pull in the audit report to see. But it was in relation to the QZAB, Qualified Zone Academy Bond Agreement. And that's why a lot of people, when you hear QZAB, that's what it's in reference to. So the payments that were set to be an NEF that was spoken about in 2014 were listed as a QZAB payment. So that's where that discussion is from.
A payment for what?
The programs that we were receiving here, Success Maker was the case study that was being complete, which was an online program that the students were using for math and ELA. And in addition to another program at the high school for STEM Academy.
Which I don't understand any of. Is there a way this can be written that the common person can understand what we got for $3 million?
Yeah, if you go through the article, it has a complete breakdown of exactly what the NEF, what was presented and what was proposed and what was received and what was not received.
Okay.
Right in the audit. It's a several-page document. Yeah.
Okay, all right. All right, thank you.
And Ms. Spinelli, no other comments?
Okay, motion to adjourn.
I'd like to make a comment if I can.
So moved.
Can I make a comment? I got my hand raised.
Thank you, everyone, and have a good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Cleaver.
Good
Thank
night.
you, everyone, for attending.